Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Speakers for Schools broadcast. It's also the last online talk we have of the year. So, thank you for tuning in and joining us. I know that your summer breaks are coming up so quickly now. You don't have long to go, and hopefully, this is a great way to sort of finish your last week, I hope, of school before you do go to those summer holidays. Today's session will last for roughly round about 45 minutes and will include a presentation from our speaker before we later move on to a student Q&A. Questions for our speaker can be submitted via the Q&A function, which you'll find just underneath the stream on your screens, and depending what device you're using, you might have to scroll down just a little bit to be able to see that box. The box is open now, and it will remain open through the rest of the session. So do keep those questions coming. Let us know anything you want. Now's your chance to kind of get those questions answered. And do look out on that box towards the end of the session, round about 35 past or 25 to. A feedback poll should go live as well, and that's where you can tell us about your thoughts on today's session, as well as submitting those questions as well. If you find yourself to experience any sort of issues today, please do let us know via that Q&A box, and one of our moderators will be on hand to help where we can, or you can email us at broadcasts@speakersforschools.org, and you can see that web address in the same email that sent you the link. Now, all our housekeeping has been sorted. We shall move on to the main event of today. So we're really excited to welcome today's speaker. Sally Everett is the Vice Dean of Education at King's College London, and is a leading voice within higher education. And she's very passionate about sort of widening anticipation and ensuring all students have access to different opportunities. And she really is an amazing champion, who really is about inclusivity and broadening and acceptance across the education sector. So we're really excited to hear from her today. So everybody, please welcome Sally. Hello.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We're really excited that you are here. I know you have a presentation to share, which might take you a few seconds to get up, but yeah, thank you, and we're excited to hear.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will share my screen because I've got quite a few images for you. If I can certainly share those images for you, which worked before and now is obviously not working now. So you might have to do that for me. In terms of sharing the screen, for some reason it's not working. However, I am delighted that I am your final speaker of the session, and I hope you've enjoyed this the talks up until this point. You were asked to think about questions. I'm happy to answer questions about my talk, but also because I'm involved in universities, and I've been involved in universities for about 16, 17 years in leadership and management, that I'm very happy to talk to you, and it doesn't have to be about King's. So I've been asked to talk about pride, the importance of equity and representation in education. I've led inclusive education for a number of years, and so I'm very happy to be here. I also lead a new centre, which is a Centre for Innovation, Leadership, Education and Development. And really the focus is about inclusive education, particularly business education, but broader education. I'm going to talk for maybe 20, 25 minutes. I'm going to be very open with you, very honest from my perspective, a few stories, a few anecdotes about engagement with students, but also some of the things that I think are important in this space. So I wish you a happy belated Pride, because obviously Pride Month in the UK was last month, but actually thrilled to be here. So I'm going to just flick through some of my slides and tell you a little bit about myself and about the session today. So I want to firstly talk about the importance of I think me being open about my identity with you, and hopefully that will explain quite a bit. Some of the current context in the world, but also in the UK, and really thinking about the importance of role models, inclusive education more broadly, not just LGBTQ plus, the importance of building a sense of belonging and brave spaces and our responsibilities in this space, and areas like transgender awareness, but also staff. And this image on the right-hand side, I took at London Pride, literally just a couple of weeks ago, and you'll see a few images that I took there. And I was proudly in the crowd. I had a little rainbow, I suppose, kind of markings on my face and everything else, and it was wonderful. A really lovely occasion to both celebrate, but also to really recognise the journey in which we've come on. So many of you have spoken to or heard from people, and in terms of pride, we see it as a celebration, but it is also a protest. And it wasn't that long ago that being gay was illegal, and it is in many countries, and I'll come to that shortly. And you may know the history of it, but it obviously stems back to the 1960s and 1969, and where there was a police raid of the Stonewall Inn over in the US, and that really kind of kick-started some riots that became Pride because of that antagonism and that violence towards the LGBTQ plus community. And so I think it's important to recognise that that was a protest, and also that we can celebrate that. And I am so proud of Speakers for Schools and that you've joined, because actually it wasn't that long ago, many of your teachers, I'm sure, and you may have heard of Section 28, and I quote, where it is actually prohibited to promote homosexuality in local authorities, and that was especially schools. And that has been a massive campaign and was only repealed in 2003, believe it or not. So this is a current challenge, and I'll outline that to you. So why is this important to me? Who am I? Why am I speaking to you? In some ways, I can't quite believe that I am a leader in, I think that, one of the top 5 universities in the UK. I did go to university. I did history, actually, originally in Bristol University, and I loved history. I had no idea where it was going to take me at all, to be honest. But I did it. I loved it, and then I went traveling. And then when I was traveling, and I just fell in love with the world, and decided a few years later to do a master's in tourism and sustainability, actually. And so that's what took me to the University of West of England. And then I became a researcher at the University of West of England, that's in Bristol. And that was in tourism, that was in sustainability, but also touched on inclusion, particularly the impact of tourism on people, on local communities. Then I went to the University of Bedfordshire, and I actually moved to Bedford. And that was to run a department in tourism and events and marketing, and look after the students, really in my role as head of department. And then I moved to Anglia Ruskin University as Deputy Dean of Education, which I loved for six years. And then now I'm at King's, and I've been at King's Business School, King's College London, as a professor. Sometimes I can't quite believe that I got to that, and I'll maybe reflect on why. For the last 6 years, and King's is a wonderful institution in the centre of London. And I show the picture on the right-hand side because when you go to graduation, so when students go to graduation, there will be a presiding officer. And usually that's the Vice-Chancellor, so the very, very top of the university. So if you think of King's, we've got about 35,000 students, and it's usually the Vice-Chancellor shaking hands. For us, it's the Royal Festival Hall, so it's enormous on the South Bank in London. And these are the robes that the presiding officer wear. And in 2 weeks' time, and a few months ago, I was the presiding officer. So I kind of effectively was standing in for the Vice-Chancellor. And you think that someone, that is first in family, that is half Chinese, and is a gay woman. Actually, sometimes I pinch myself that I was fortunate, and I have been fortunate to be seen as the most senior person in the university. And these are the gold robes that I get, and I get to shake everyone's hand, which is really, really lovely in that. But we are more than our work identities. And this is what I wanted to share with you. So there is a picture of my wife and myself on our wedding day, almost exactly 10 years ago. So that was a wonderful, wonderful occasion. But when we got together, marriage wasn't possible at all. In fact, civil partnership wasn't even possible. So we've seen that come a long way. In the centre, you'll see my two dogs. So that's Obi, my little spaniel. He's 12 years old now, so quite grey. And then Eri, who is a Romanian rescue. So we've had her since about 7 months, but she was on kind of a street dog. And so they are my two dogs. And then on the right-hand side was Pride on Saturday, but I particularly took a picture of this group because it's the Barts Hospital. And both of my parents owe their lives to Barts Hospital because they have both had major, major heart surgery, valve replacements and everything else. And so I was so pleased to see them represented at London Pride. So I took a picture of them. So we're more than our work identities. And I suppose it is, problematic at the moment. And many of you will see particularly what's happening in the States with the new Trump administration and some of the concerns perhaps about equality, diversity and inclusion. Many of you may have come across the word kind of woke or woke washing, and the concern that, that somehow inclusion is different to or damages a kind of meritocracy, this idea of getting somewhere with merit, but actually it hides the disadvantages that so many students, so many people already have that is of no fault of their own, and actually it's society that can disadvantage. So what I've thrown up just a few images of maybe concerns that people have had where there is a pushback on inclusion, which I find really quite horrifying. And that's why it's so important. And I'm so pleased that I've had the opportunity to talk to you today, whether that be Supreme Court rulings and the pushback on, the legal definition of what is a woman in terms of transgender awareness, but also that may well be rights in Iran for women. That may well also be LGBTQ plus rights. So there's a lot of discussion going on at the moment. And I think it's important for us as allies, as champions, if you identify as LGBT, or if you don't, to actually try and really demonstrate why, I suppose, this kind of discourse of this kind of arguments against identity can be so damaging. And so I hope we can really be inclusive for all. And why is it damaging? So what I put here on this map is basically, this is an image that I've borrowed. People say, oh, why don't we have straight pride? Well, you can see in red, i.e. there are no countries, where all the countries where it's illegal to be heterosexual, to be straight, where people are ridiculed, beaten, tortured, imprisoned, in some cases murdered for being heterosexual. And of course, there are no red areas because there is no country where it is illegal to be heterosexual. My own country, so my mum is from Malaysia, and Malaysia, where it is illegal. So much so that for 10 years, I didn't talk and didn't tell my parents at all, mainly actually a lot of friends, because there was a concern. And when I did tell my parents, mother was very concerned that it was illegal in Malaysia, so don't tell the family. They were also concerned about my career. And obviously, I've just said, I'm a professor at King's College London. It didn't stop me, but my parents, having not been to university, have not been in academia, were concerned it would affect my career. And that was one of their first concerns. So that was quite a journey, and that's probably a longer story in terms of a personal journey. But when we got married, and I said this was 10 years ago, suddenly my parents could see 100 people celebrating that and it being fine and people being joyous about it. So much so that when we finished the ceremony, which was outside, there was actually this inverted rainbow in the sky. Unbelievable, super rare. But people said, look, and I like to think it was maybe a bit of a sign, and I have this little video of us looking up with this inverted rainbow there. And tell you what, having had my mum say, "Don't say anything to the family," she literally put all the photos on Facebook, and I suppose kind of outed me to a certain degree to my family in Malaysia. But they were amazing, really, really understanding, and they were fine with it. But you have to be careful, and I'm obviously careful because I travel a lot, and there's a lot of countries where that it is problematic. But I have a wonderful relationship now with my parents, and they're super proud. But that took 15, 20 years. So I completely empathize if any of you are struggling with this at the moment. I also put this here because I found this image, again, people say, "Oh, why don't we have straight pride?" Well, every day is straight pride. And I said, it's never illegal. You don't get imprisoned. You don't have conversion therapy where people think it's unnatural. Straight people walking hand in hand down the street don't get shouted at or bruised generally. And I certainly have been, and I know people that have been. And so that's why it was important to me to talk to you today. When I was at Pride in London 2 weeks ago, I saw one of my students coming down as a volunteer, and I didn't know that he was in the community. And he saw me with my little rainbow stripes, and I obviously said hello, and I had my friends and everyone else, and we gave him a donation towards Pride because it's quite expensive to put on. And what was really lovely was he emailed me at the end of the day, and I provided the email there to the left-hand side because he wrote to me and he said, "Dear Professor Everett, you saw me volunteering at Pride in London this year. It was my first Pride ever and my first time ever volunteering for any cause. As someone who struggles with my own sexuality, I've decided to face my struggles and not hide from it." And for me, that was one of the most powerful emails. And this is why I want to talk to you because, he said, "You don't know how much it meant to have seen you there." And I had no idea how much it meant for him to see me there and to be visible. And yet, when I think back, who was the first person that I told that I think I was gay? It was my supervisor, my professor. It was someone in education, someone that I trusted and that I thought would understand. And actually, I have found education environments, whether it be schools or it be universities, to be some of the most open places. So my advice in that, and she was amazing and very, very supportive, my professor at the time, find someone that you can trust, you can respect to have these conversations with. And also be the reason someone feels proud of who they are. And that's what happened with Eric when I saw him. I had no idea the impact that just being present at Pride would have. And so I know, some of you will just, be allies. Some of you will be champions. But actually to ensure that people and your peers are seeing how supportive you are, I think means the world. And I'm hoping that now Eric will be much stronger, much more confident going forward. So in terms of wider inclusion, I have a couple of images that I wanted to kind of share with you. So I have this image huge on my office door to remind others that actually not everyone starts from the same position. And it's been my last work in education for a number of years now to ensure that colleagues, staff, educators, tutors are aware of this. And you can see the image here. But actually, if you are asking a fish to climb a tree, then surely that's not going to be as fair as perhaps asking the chimpanzee. And so this idea for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And I know you would have gone through your exams, probably you've got exams ahead of you. And I really try and advocate for diversity of assessment. I am not a huge fan of exams. I actually think the schools process is very traditional, and it ends up being the situation where students, young learners are coming from different positions, coming from different skill sets, and are being asked to do the same thing. So I hope, and I can see certainly the evolution of the educational process. But when I joined King's, I was very keen that we weren't just going to put everyone into an exam. Some people haven't experienced exams, and obviously we had COVID where many of our students didn't, but also some people will get very, very anxious by exams, and surely we can test understanding and knowledge and learning in different ways, and that was always my hope. And this image I find helpful as well, and I suppose, what does this mean for your own learning? So if I just explain some of the terms, the reality is sometimes people have a huge amount of what we call privilege or advantage. Maybe their parents went to university. Maybe parents, carers read with you when you were younger and gave you a step up on this box. Maybe you're completely able-bodied. There's no disability, and so therefore, you've got this advantage. And the reality is that some people, like that little chap in blue, is behind. He can't see anything of that baseball game. And then we talk about equality. And equality, everyone has the same box. So it sounds fine, great. Everyone has the same. But actually, if you're disadvantaged, just, this guy's short, okay, he's got the same box, he's got the same exam, he's got the same approach to learning, but he still cannot see that baseball game. So my focus at the moment is about equity, ensuring that students, people, get what is appropriate for their needs and requirements. And as you can see, the little guy in blue has those two boxes and can see the baseball game. So how does that play out in learning and education? And that's what I spend a lot of time doing. Actually, are exams appropriate? Or might presentations be appropriate? Or might a poster creation be more appropriate? And obviously we're moving, and I hope that we can all move towards liberation, which is that opening of the field, opening of without barriers, without anything stopping you. And that may be emotionally and mentally as well as physically. So in the classroom, I teach marketing, and I've worked in marketing, and I want to bring the world into the class. And I hope your teachers do that as well, particularly in academia, so universities. I see, as I said, a place of inclusion, of liberal values. We even had a King's bus at Pride, so there's quite a few colleagues that were there. But for me, when I'm teaching marketing, I think it's important for us to be critical of what we see in our adverts. And I think you had a talk from BAFTA as well, and they talk about representation in film. Well, you can see it in TV, in adverts as well, and in marketing. And as much as I love a Marks and Spencer sandwich, I do wonder whether there has been what we'd call rainbow washing at Pride. So these are companies kind of jumping on the bandwagon because it's very lucrative. It can create a lot of revenues in terms of being seen as to be inclusive. But then you have, the LGBT sandwich. Maybe it's a very nice sandwich, but the idea of rainbow sandwiches, and then you get rainbow bottles of drink, and you get rainbow flags everywhere in June, and it seems to all kind of die down after that. And yet, so I encourage you to have a look at those really authentic representations and marketing campaigns, where sometimes they don't even need to say the company, because they are what we saw, brand advocates. They really promote these causes. One example I really like is Nike. And there's some lovely videos that you'll see, but one image there, be the hero you didn't have. And these are about the role models, about being able to wear a hijab or a head covering, Muslim women being involved in sport, and actually inspiring people in that way. So I also try, and I think it's important to build a sense of belonging in our classrooms with each other. And I suppose a question for you to reflect on is, do you feel as though you matter? And that for me is important, for students to feel that they matter, that their voice is heard in the classroom, because we are all important. And by doing that, I try and build an inclusive classroom. So the picture below with the staff and the flag is my actual King's College lanyard that I wear. Not everyone has to wear that. You can ask for it. And for me, that is an obvious sign that students can come to me and know that they won't be judged. In fact, they'll be supported, because I want to include them. So it's a very small sign, but it can be a really powerful sign, and a really important one. And when I see, a little rainbow flag in, I don't know, a shop or something, I feel, okay, at least they've thought about it. At least I can be seen here. The other one, maybe many of you, if you like Starbucks coffee, you'll know what that is. But they had a wonderful campaign, which was, you can tell me whatever name you want on your cup. And when I say my pronouns are she and her, so I was going to and start with that, that is important to recognize people's pronouns and their gender identity, because many, some people will not recognize themselves as male or female. And actually, it is important to what we would say normalize pronouns. And so they don't feel kind of separated, because we can sometimes just use a default that is, oh, yeah, he did that or she did that. And so I'm very cognizant of the fact that actually I will often use they or person, police officer rather than policeman. Although I struggled the other day, I went to the seaside and there were lots of kind of, I would say, fisher people. We say fisherman. And so just being aware, I think, in terms of actually respecting someone's identity. And that's why we talk about our pronouns. So I'll say, I'm Sally Everett. My pronouns are she and her. Others might be they and them. Others might be he and him. But actually, for me, I've seen the difference of that inclusion. And certainly at university, there is an unhealthy relationship between mental health and those LGBTQ plus students. And we've seen that in the evidence, because they don't feel perhaps that they are represented, that they are seen. And so that's why I'm passionate about it, to ensure that actually the well-being and the mental health of our students is improved, because they feel included and they feel seen, whether that through pronouns or whether that through our resources and activities. So students, for me, obviously really important, but you will know, and our students know, what is best for them. This is my view in terms of some of the classes. So when you go, if you're thinking about going to university, many opportunities to get involved with student groups, student societies. This is a wonderful occasion where we helped the Bay Tree charity, and I worked with Adobe, who use quite a lot of computer technology, visual systems. And our students were involved in helping in this charity, which was a charity to help underrepresented women. But I also have advisory groups. I also have projects that students can get involved in. And these are wonderful projects. Things like, Say My Name, they came up with, where actually our team's backgrounds, I haven't got one today, you can see my terrible probably decorating and things, but that actually how to pronounce one's name and provide pronouns for that. So I'll give you an example quickly of that. So we had a number of different teams backgrounds, particularly in COVID, and the students said, actually, someone always pronounces my name wrongly. So can we create a slide? Very, very simple. But you'll see Mira Smith has her pronunciation, her pronouns she, her, and then obviously we would appear on the screen. And these are small things, but they can make a massive difference. And I suppose I encourage you to think, okay, what is the small thing that I can do to make a massive difference? Because employers, and when you're thinking university, future careers, employers are looking for people that have that cultural competence, that emotional intelligence to be able to work with colleagues. So I bring in various different guest lectures. This is Dr. Clara Baker. She is a trans woman and has been a wonderful advocate across the nation. She's at Oxford University, does something very sciencey, and I invited her in to talk to us. But what was really interesting was in terms of transgender awareness and talking about her experiences. I think people didn't perhaps understand, had so many questions, were a bit fearful. And so that's why we were trying to unlock, her experiences and why she was attracting and had attracted, I think, some hatred. And it was really hard to listen to that. But I think it was important for our staff and students to hear her story as well. And what was wonderful was when I put this slide together and I asked for the out tag, the alternative tag. So when, if people have screen readers and use the images, the auto creation, the Gen AI creation had 2 women sitting in chairs in front of a projector screen. And obviously she transitioned to be a woman. I just thought that was lovely. Finally, maybe one example where generative AI is actually recognizing people. So just a couple of final slides, and I'm very happy to take questions. One of the things that I did recently was run a number of webinars similar to this, but with a panel of staff. And I called it Rainbow Reflections. And it was about celebrating LGBT lives in the business school and in higher education. And I just approached a few colleagues that I knew were comfortable and felt, I suppose, safe with me as a chair, and asking them about their lives. And it's the first time that we've done that. And many colleagues, actually, I think this webinar attracted more staff than any other, because people are nosy, aren't they? People want to know about their lecturers or their teachers. And these teachers were really, really honest. And they were talking to me about their experiences when it was difficult to be kind of gay, or when it was difficult, or had they thought about their role as a kind of role models in the classroom. So for me, it was a wonderful an occasion, and many staff said, we're really proud to work somewhere that can have these conversations, and said, I reference back, it wasn't that long ago that this was, it was all a kind of illegal, and it wasn't, we couldn't be open at all. So we've moved on a long way. And another thing that I'm really pleased about, and I hope in your schools that you have resources that reflect your student population, so the different identities, and we talk about intersectionality as well. So you might be gay and black, you might be female and trans, whatever it might be. It is important to have resources and textbooks and readings that reflect the world and reflect you, so you matter. And so the book that I wrote recently with colleagues, so is on the left-hand side there, and you can see it's a book aimed at university lecturers and students, but diversity, equity, and inclusion for business and management. And some of the contributors are on the right-hand side. And these are educators that wanted to write about inclusion and equity in marketing, in human resource management, in economics, in accounting. So all the different type of subjects that obviously come into a business school. And I'm very, very proud of this. We had a huge launch, and the publisher, who is Sage, was saying this is the first kind of book that we feel it's a really gold list book, very important, very topical. And so I'm very, very proud that we have launched a book which is about diversity, equity, inclusion. And so, if you are interested in academia, if you are interested in going on to a PhD, I'm very, very happy to answer questions about that, because actually writing books that students read, I think, is a really powerful approach. And my last slide, because I'd be interested in hearing questions, is, actually thinking about how you can be you and how you can encourage others around you to be you, be proud, be you. Many of us start from different positions. Many of us have different privileges. I am very, my first language is English. Maybe many of you, it is not. And I think that's sometimes can be an immediate disadvantage. And actually being able to think about our education system, being able to be each other's support is important in this space. So I show you an image there. That's Somerset House. That's very near King's. In fact, our law building is just behind that coloured staircase. And the right-hand side, actually in the middle there, that's our little van, rather than a bus this time, a van at Pride. And actually our chaplain is right in the centre, and she's amazing. So Ellen, whilst being an Anglican chaplain, really wants to support others in this space. So I suppose how I leave it is, my parents many, many years ago were worried about my career, and that has not proved true at all. In fact, I've seen it as an advantage. I've seen it being able to talk to students, to yourselves, with lived experience, with a passion that we should not be disadvantaging any of our students in our schools through assessment, through learning and teaching, through the way that we use examples and resources, has been my life's work for quite some time. And I'm very proud professor. I'm very proud Vice Dean Education, so I look after a number of thousands of students, and I continue to try and ensure that our spaces are inclusive. And I hope that we'll all lean into this space and ensure our schools and the environments are inclusive and respectful. So thank you very much for listening.
Hello, thank you for that. Yeah, really good. I'm going to dive straight into questions just so we can get as many answered as we can.
Of course.
And we'll start with this one here, which is how do you think students can help the school environment be more fair to everyone?
I'm not sure whether your schools will thank me for this, but you'll see that I'm a great advocate of learners, of students having a voice in this space. So setting up advisory groups and you being in the kind of governance structure and being able to help make decisions and policy and practice, and that your voice is heard in that space is important. Secondly, I'd say representation is massively important. So at King's, for example, there was this room and it was all these old white blokes, basically, they'd all died. And they were all white, and the students came in. It's like, we are not represented in this space, and actually very easily we were able to change that representation. So I think, where are your spaces? We have this wonderful frieze actually now at King's with all the female professors, and that's really powerful. Actually, you've got to see it to be it. So I think schools and you can be doing that, and you can be creating those spaces. And I suppose thirdly, just quickly, because there are questions, is actually demand resources that reflect you, the community, the world. So if you're seeing in your textbooks just dead white guys, then say, hang on a second, how is this reflecting us as a diverse student population? We would like to see representation of Black women, of gay men, whatever, and just diversity. So for me, I talk about Jedi, if anyone's a Star Wars fan. I know it's quite some time ago, but justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I love the fact that Jedi, and I have a dog called Obi, so you could see the link there. It's about justice, is how are we being just to all of our students and recognizing them so they matter. And so I think students coming together, learners, school children coming together are powerful as an entity and as a unit rather than in isolation. So I think work with each other and build that community and challenge. I can say it because I'm not with your school teachers. Challenge your school teachers to reflect the diversity of the world in the classroom.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to move on and just keep going. So our next question is about university. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to go to university but isn't sure on if they should, or if it's for them?
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, the irony is, I have 3 nephews, and their aunt is a professor. It's like, come to university, and admittedly, it isn't for everyone. Obviously, I love it, and what I would advise is have you talk to people that perhaps are going to university. So we have students that come out to schools and talk to you. So they're 18, 19, they've made that decision. So go to universities, go and see what they're like, go and see if you could, you feel that you fit, because actually one university, so you've seen I belong to a few universities. King's is very different to Bedfordshire, to UE, and you might decide that you want a campus university, so actually all kind of in one space, or a city university like Bristol. So it's not just, do I want to go to university, but it's, do I want, which area, what kind of university, small universities, large universities, research intensive. So these are like the Oxford, Cambridge, King's ones, teaching intensive universities, very, very different types. So talk to people. I have a website. You can always kind of talk to me. Try it. Get encouraged. I think schools usually have universities that come and talk to you. You can do that. I mean, statistically, you will earn more coming to a university, so with a degree. But I know that there is a massive debt, that comes with it. But it does pay off statistically, and the research will say that. But neither of my parents went to university. They had very fulfilled lives. But I I think in terms of the societies, the clubs, the networks, the people that you engage with, you cannot beat university in terms of that diversity and giving you a chance to kind of really come out of the school, the parenting bubble that you're in, and really see the world, because I've got 70 nationalities of students that come into my classroom, and that's unrivaled. So I think, yeah, talking, reading, do a bit of research. Don't feel pressured to come to university, but if anyone wants to kind of just speak to one of my students, I'm sure it can be arranged somehow. Just kind of reach out in some way, because I've got a website, King's College London, because we have a provision where we have students that come and talk to you.
Yeah, which is great to know. I didn't know that you did that there, so that's a really interesting
I
thing.
set it up.
Okay. Initiative by yourself, one of your widening participation.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
very relevant.
Exactly.
We have this question here, which is a really simple one, but I think it could be quite difficult. It's, how can I be an ally?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that's a massive question, isn't it? But I think, and I'm so pleased that you asked that. It's because so few people ask that in terms of being an ally. So being open and building trust with others, so people feel that they can talk to you. There is a fine line between being authentic and then kind of being someone that kind of just goes with the Pride Month and goes with the other month, and so doing rather than just talking as well. So being with so for example, Pride, there were a lot of allies there, not necessarily those that are LGBTQ plus, and just being there in that space and celebrating with others was important. Speaking for others that perhaps are nervous or don't have the confidence to speak up for themselves, you could be that ally. So for example, I talked about representation in books and textbooks, and actually kind of calling it out and saying, actually, this would be useful, knowing that perhaps you've got students around you that come from minoritized backgrounds that are not represented. If you hear inappropriate comments, and this is by others, and perhaps that actually those who are in those communities have heard and have been upset by, it is important to raise it with your teachers, and say something. So don't remain silent when you see injustices. And I know that takes a bravery, but maybe do that with others as well, because I tell you, it's so important to have those allies around where you feel safe, and you can create a safe space, an inclusive space for others. And that's what I try and do. And that's why sometimes in the class, I would inadvertently talk about my wife. Suddenly the students will, because I can be gay and an ally, will feel comfortable in that space and talk to me. So I think you'll find your equivalent of being able to speak up, speak out, act in the interests of others. And I'm really pleased that you want to be, because that will mean a lot actually to your fellow students.
Definitely. It can be difficult to just say something sometimes, but that's the only thing you can do on occasion. And when you have to, you just have to. It comes back to the Jedi that you were saying, isn't it? That sort of justice thing. Sometimes you have to just say.
Someone has to, otherwise it remains silent, or people see that as as acceptable and as fine, and it's like a snowball, and then when they hear something that is appropriate, that could be racist, sexist, homophobic, and it's like, oh, well, that person's not been challenged on it, and so that's appropriate. And you don't want to be creating a situation where actually that kind of language is normalized. Actually, you want to be challenging that. And in the UK, we're fortunate, we have an Equality Act, so 2010, and actually we have a legal obligation to ensure that we do not discriminate against those with protective characteristics. And there's a number, but sexual orientation is obviously one of those.
We are towards the end of our time now. It's 1:45, so that's gone by really quick. I will say a feedback poll should be going live any minute. So as we are sort of wrapping up this final one, do let us know let us know how you found today's session. Give us that feedback, and if not, of course, a feedback link will be shared in the email afterwards as well. But Sally, as we are sort of closing the session down, do you have any final thoughts, feelings, key bits of advice that you'd like to leave our students with as we close today's session?
I'd say sometimes it's difficult to be you and be open and honest, but others will respond well to that. But do that in and create those safe and brave spaces for each other. I think I reference back, being an ally. It is important because sometimes society we can actively disadvantage each other, and I think I see my students, I see you as leaders in the future, that will be responsible, that will be thoughtful, respectful, and we need that because the world is really, really challenging at the moment. We don't have the leaders that embrace equality and inclusion and make people feel that they matter and they are seen. And so I think as you think over the summer, be critical of your surroundings, be critical of what you see in terms, and what I mean by that is the representations are, are you being represented? If not, can you change that? So we can be change makers in our own little ways, and it might be tiny, but it means a lot to someone else. So thank you.
I think that's a great sort of, being a change maker is a great thing to sort of end today's session on. So thank you, Sally, for joining us for your presentation and for sharing your thoughts throughout this Q&A. It's been wonderful having you on and a really great way to wrap up not only Pride, but also the academic year. So thank you.
No, absolute pleasure. And I hope everyone has a wonderful summer and really enjoys their time out of school.
Thank you. All right, everyone, unfortunately, that's the end of today's session. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you have an amazing break, and we will see you next academic year. Bye for now.